I also started recording. Okay. So there are still people joining. I don't see some faces here, so let's start. I think in the middle they'll join. So I think it's visible now. I can zoom it in, right. So today the thing that we're going to discuss, the first thing I actually forgot, I should just greet you. Assalamu alaikum everyone. So some other people also wanted to join. Or if you can, you just monitor who else want to join. You can admit them if you have that. I'll just make you the organizer. Okay.
So
Now you
let
can.
me see.
You can just take admit them. So there are people who are. Okay, the first thing that we are going to do is we have to have a programming language in our belt. So in order to understand anything, in order to make computers understand something, the first thing that you have to do is you have to make the machines understand some things, because otherwise, like, how are we able to communicate with the machines? There is no way except we must know a language. So why have we actually selected this language, Python? So what is the thing between this? Why have we selected this? Why Python? Because there are so many languages. We could have chosen C, C++, probably Java, some other language. But in machine learning, this is the most widely used language. That's the first thing. This is most widely used language within the industry as well. If you go to some industries, and there you will see the most popular language that people are using is Python. And the second thing is, this is just like plain English. Plain English. By that I mean it's very easy to learn. If some of you people have already learned C or C++, it's really great. So the best thing you can do is just take those programming concepts and write somehow them in the plain English, and then you'll be able to see how easy this is. So it's easy, it's widely available. And the other thing that there are a lot of packages. There are a lot of packages which are, for example, you might have heard about NumPy, which is used in machine learning, deep learning. There is Pandas, which is used for usually reading of these files and then writing out the files on some other file systems. Then we have Matplotlib. Then there are Seaborn. They are basically used for plotting things if you want to plot some graphs and stuff like that. So a lot of packages are there, like PyTorch is there, which is used in deep learning. Then we have TensorFlow, which came from Facebook actually. So it has a huge library support as well. And the other thing is, it is a generic language if you see it. So for example, if you learn Python, it means that you can do other things with the Python as well. ऐसा नहीं है कि तुम सिर्फ उसी चीज़ पे restricted होंगे. You will be able to do much more things if you know Python language. So for example, there is a famous language which is sometimes used, that's called R. It usually is used when we are dealing with statistics. So this language, if you learn that, probably it will help you in performing some good tasks on machine learning things on some data, but it is not a general purpose language. So this is the motto, that why are we using Python. Let's first go, like, what is the meaning of Python? Does everybody know that what is the difference between high level language and what is a low level language? Just raise hands or something like that, so because I'll know. Okay, many of the people don't know, so I'll just say what's the high level language and what's a low level language. So basically, if you differentiate languages, there are low level languages, LL, and there are high level languages. So low level language is like binary. If you have to write the code, because as you know, machines and these computers, they understand just ones and zeros. That is, if there is a high voltage or there is less voltage. So based on that, we write programs. In the first generation computers, if you see that, we had punch cards, things like that. We have to punch holes in them. Holes means a 1, and if there is not a hole, that means 0. So those languages were called as binary, and you have to write everything in ones and zeros, and you have to get instructions like that, and machines can directly understand those ones and zeros, and this is not readable to humans in a particular form, so you will have to for example, translate this in some way. But afterwards, it was very difficult to write programs in this language. Then we came on assembly language. Assembly was somewhat understandable to humans, but it was still very close to binary. So it was not human readable like perfect. If you, for example, see if somebody has worked in assembly, you write move, for example, register 1, register 2 like this, and then you can write this add what are the contents in R2 and R1, things like that. So this language is also some sort of unreadable to humans. So these languages are called low level language, the language which are near to the hardware. So when you write that, there is no need of such huge conversions. Then there are high level language. High level language which are human readable, which are human readable. For example, if you take language C, if you write a function there printf, printf basically means you're going to print something, that it is some sort of like closer to humans and humans can understand it. But the problem we have with high level language, we have to translate them into the machine code. This binary is actually called machine code. We have to make the change in the code, manipulate the code in such a way so that machine understands it. So there are compilers and interpreters and a thing like involved in that which do these tasks. So every line of code, it goes into that phase. If you have read about compilers, so when you write a single line of code, what happens there is the first thing that happens is it will go, for example, to some assembler to get into convert into assembly. Then we have other compilers and interpreters that change it into binary. So if you see this Python, the first thing is it's a high level language. Here I mentioned it, Python is a high level language. That means it's closer to humans. And naturally a question arises, if it's a high level language, then we need to translate so that machines can understand it. If you are writing some code, so you have to translate it to actually the machine code. So everything that I told is, I can write it here. So when you have a high level language, you need to convert it into machine code. Is it visible? I'll write it here. Everything that is written in high level language, it has to be converted, and the conversion has to be done in machine code, because computer only understands machine code. You cannot expect a machine will understand whatever I spit it out. So in between there is a whole process going on in this. So mostly they are done by compilers or interpreters. So people who have done their bachelor's, they might have a subject compiler design, how these compilers are designed. So in the compilers there are a lot of phases. There's a phase like lexical analysis, then we have semantic analysis, then there is some formation of past and things like. I don't want to go into those details, but just to make you understand that high level language are to be converted into machine code, and in between there's a stage called as compilation or interpretation. So this Python is a high level language, and it's an interpreter based language. If you see it right here, I mentioned it is an interpreter based language. And I also told you what is the meaning of the general purpose as well. So it can be used for more purpose than one. That we'll see in applications, the applications that a Python has. First thing is it's a high level language. Then it is an interpreter based language. By interpreter I mean like we need not to go into depth what an interpreter is, what a compiler is, because it will again take whole other lecture. So there are actually subjects based on the compilers and interpreters. Like in short, I'll say compiler, there is a basic difference between a compiler and an interpreter. Compiler takes the whole code and tries to process it in one go. If you see compilers, they take the whole code and they try to process it. What interpreters do is they'll take code line by line. Okay, the basic difference, this is the basic difference. So there can be technical differences which I don't want to delve into, because otherwise we'll take whole of the time with compilers and interpreters. Just remember this basic difference. Compilers, when they look at the code, when they have to translate any code, so what they do is they'll take the whole code and try to process it in the one go, and then they'll find the errors or do some processing, whatever they want to do. But interpreters, they'll do it line by line. For example, if you have usually programs are written in lines, so the first line will be checked by the interpreter, then second line, then if there is an error in fourth line, if first three lines are okay, the execution of the first three lines will happen. But if you look in the in this Python, it actually uses a compiler as well. Like technically speaking, you might not find those in the online blogs that usually people write that Python is an interpreter based language, but it's actually interpiler based language. There is a compiler. Python has the compiler as well, because as I said that in this conversion of high level language to machine code, so there are different steps involved, like lexical analysis there. I said there is a formation of parse tree and things like that. So for one of the phases, actually Python uses a compiler. That's for the syntax analysis. Oh, I'm writing on the picture. Syntax analysis. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty details what the things are, but when you write some wrong syntax in a language, without involvement of the interpreter, Python will detect this syntax error. So If somebody says what is the funda of the Python language, so you can say it is basically use a compiler as well as interpreter. But compiler is just used in one stage in the syntax when there is syntax analysis of the phase. Okay, so this language was actually created by Guido van Rossum in 1991. So he was a mathematician. Okay, if there were so many languages, why did he create a new language like Python? So every language, every computer language has a design philosophy behind it. As he was a mathematician, he wanted the language to be simple, to be easy to read, and when somebody wants to code in it, it should be simple. And if you see difference between C and C++, there is a lot of gap. But if you compare Python with these languages like C, C++, Java, you will find that Python code is really easy to read. Okay, so that's what his philosophy. His philosophy was that I should make this language easy to read and easy to code in. And the second thing, he's a mathematician, so he used some mathematical principles to use that. And right now, I think currently we are at the version of Python, I think 3.10. We have the Python, and you can check that as well. So what are the applications of Python? I'll just go over briefly over them because I want to go into the meat of the lecture today. I don't want you to bore with the details of what Python is, because that you can read it online. Applications of Python, you can use Python in web development. For example, as you might be, some of you are interested in web development, so there you have different frameworks which are based on Python, like Django and stuff like that. So there is the base thing there is it uses Python in the backend. And then if you see the best use cases is in the machine learning part. So you will use for machine learning, for deep learning, you will mostly use the Python language where you will code in. So again, then we have to create graphical user interface for development environment. As I said, web for frameworks like Django, which are used by YouTube, Instagram, and Dropbox, they also use Python. If somebody is interested in web scraping, by web scraping I mean, for example, if you have to automate a thing, you want to actually I had to go home recently, so what I had the task in hand was I had to compare flight prices. For that I had to go to different websites to see the prices. So what I did is I wrote a program for web scraping, so I could go on those websites automatically. I wrote a Python script actually by using the Selenium. It's a web scraper. So what I did is I wrote a program so that it retrieves the prices of the flights, and then it shows which of the websites shows the cheapest price among those. So you can do web scraping by using Python. Then there are test frameworks. There are lot of things that you can do with the Python, because it has a very strong contributors. So they usually give a lot of people give a lot of feedbacks, and they keep the language updated. So it's used in scientific computation, multimedia applications, and text processing, and other multiple of domains. So I'm saying like this language is cornerstone for tech giants like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, Dropbox, Uber, and many more. I don't think there is a company which does not speak Python. Right now, when I'm working, I'm also mostly working in Python. I also work in some low-level language, but most of the time I work in this Python. So I spoke with this, what is the meaning of this interpreter-based language. So you can just go through these notes if somebody wants to see that. And then platform independent. It's also platform independent. That means that if I write my code on one machine, so I can execute it on other machines as well. For example, I have the Linux machine with me. So if I write the code in Linux machine, I'll be able to run this code in Windows, Macintosh, Solaris, and other operating systems which are there, and in the other hardware as well. So it's platform independent. Some languages are there which are not platform. For example, if you take assembly, if you write that code on my machine, it won't run on another machine. So that's what I mean by platform independence. Then it is free and open source. By open source, I mean that you can also contribute the language. You can then, for example, you can. Okay, some people are joining. So I'm saying that by free source and by free and open source, I mean you can use this language without any cost. And the other thing is that you can suggest changes to the code, and if you want something can be better done in other way, so you can just request the contributors to like pull these changes, and it is a redistributable thing. That there is no close. For example, if you see Microsoft Office, that is actually closed source. They don't give source code, but Python source code is available at python.org. Python.org. So you can check Python's documentation over there. As I said, it's a high-level language. It's very simple. By simple, I mean that you can easily read it, easily write it, and then it's embeddable. By embeddable, I mean you can easily use the Python code. And for example, if you are coding some load device drivers, while you use C++ as your main language, but you want a certain script of Python to run as well. So you can embed this code. You can embed the code of Python into C++, Java, and things like that. It's also robust. By robust, I mean you have a beautiful memory management system in that, and it's highly reliable and it's very stable. For example, if you write a code in C, it sometimes crashes because it's really closed hardware, because there is a concept of pointers and things like that. And as I said, it's a rich library support. which I like mentioned earlier. Like we have libraries that we use in machine learning. So there is a lot of things. The first topic that we are going to deal with is what are Python keywords. So I just gave an overview of what Python is. The Python, only thing the Python has, it's really slow than other language. C is really fast than it. So C and C++, I think they are the fastest language that we have, except for the assembly and binary. So Python is slow, but now our hardware is so fast that we don't feel the pace basically. So that's why most of the people, they use this Python as their language, because it's easy to read, easy to code in the Python, and easy to maintain, and there is a lot of support available as well. So if you search even on the web, if there is an error you are getting with your program, you can search, and then you will get the solutions online easily, because there is a lot of people out there who are using the language. It's like, for example, if you have to buy a car, you will buy that car for which the servicing is easy. You won't buy, for example, Mercedes, because if you buy Mercedes and if there is a problem with Mercedes, then very less people will be able to fix that. So that's how Python is. Python is like a language where a lot of support is present. Okay. So first thing that I'll go is, what are Python keywords? What are Python keywords? Let me just give you an analogy with the language. So every language, it has certain specific rules, and it has certain, for example, there is a verb, noun, and certain structure in the language. Similarly, if you see this computer language, they have some keywords. By keywords, I mean these have specific meaning. For example, if I say a keyword is there for has a certain meaning. If I write keyword if, it has a certain meaning. So for some of these things, there is a certain meaning. So that's why we call them keywords. If you see the definition even, they are also called as reserved words. They are reserved. They have a specific meaning for it, because they play a crucial role when you are programming. So if I'm speaking with you, there are words which have associating meanings with it. So similar with this. So in the Python, you have certain specific set of words which have a predefined meaning. So when the creator of the Python, they tried to code it, they made some list of keywords which they had predefined meanings in that. So if you see in here, I have written down the Python keywords: and, false, non-local, as, finally, not, assert. There is a lot of things. I want to show this in the code. So can you see the screen? I just switched the screen. Can you see that? So if you see the language, there is a set of keywords. For example, you can say import keyword and print these keyword.kv list. If I run this, so you can see the list of keywords is like false, none, true, peg parser, and, as, assert. They're all these words, they have predefined meanings. They have predefined meanings. So that means you cannot use them anywhere, but they have their own defined meanings. Without that meaning, you cannot use them. You cannot try to assign some other meaning to it. So when the language was built, that time, the language inventor or the creator of the language, he assigned some specific meanings to all these words. That's what I mean by, for example, these keywords. So if you just see the tab screen that I am again sharing, for example, this AND operation, it's used, it is the operator, it is used to perform an AND operation between two. For example, if you see this break, it is used in if-else blocks. If you see even this if is there, definition is there, import is there. Then we have these true, del is, all of these have specific meanings. While we'll be coding, you will get to know, okay, what is the meaning of this, what is the meaning of that. So that's why I have shown you the code as well. So if you see the code here, we have a package known as keyword. So we imported that keyword and we printed all the keywords that are there. Okay. Now let's move to the understanding of what is the meaning of statement and what are indentations, how to comment Python code, because this is really important. When you write a real world code, that time you have to write the code in a really good way so that people can understand it. It's not that you have to write code once and nobody will read it. As I'm always emphasizing this, that whenever you are writing the code, it is write once and read multiple times, because you will be working in a team. तो ऐसा होगा कि बहुत सारे एक बड़ी टीम तुम्हारे साथ काम कर रही होगी. If your code is really good readable, so that other people can read the code. So that's a really good service to the company as well to the project, because अगर कोई बंदा नया आता है, he is easily able to grasp your code, what are you doing in the code. And that's why this, you must know how to indent, how to comment in Python actually. So what is a statement actually? The statement in Python is any instruction that is given to Python interpreter so that it can execute it. So I'll say कोई भी ऐसी चीज़ एक लाइन में लिख दूंगा ताकि वो Python interpreter के पास जाए और Python interpreter उसको execute करे. That's a statement in Python. So ये statement बहुत types के होते हैं. There can be a humongous number of types in these Python statements. For example, there is assignment statements are there, conditional statements are there, looping statements are there, and A lot of statements are there, which we will go through, I think, shortly. So anything that we give to the Python interpreter to execute is basically a statement. Okay. So types of statements are like, for example, multi-line statements are there. There is Python conditionals and loop statements. Python if else is there. Python for loops are there. While loop is there. Try except. Python with statement. All of these are called statements. Simple definition is whatever can be executed by a Python compiler is a statement. So if you tell it, for example, if something, if true, print hello. Okay. So this is a statement. So this print is a statement. So whatever can be executed by a Python interpreter is a statement. Okay. So you can read the definitions that I have written here. So now we'll go to the indentation, if somebody knows what indentation is. And the difference between C and C++ programs and Python is that in C or C++ or Java, you can write your code in a single line and without any problems. It won't give errors. But Python has a restriction. You have to indent the code. For example, if you go on here, I think you are able to see the screen. Let me just write something. I'll comment this code out. I comment it won't be done. For example, I'll write if true, it should be capital T. Okay. If true, print hello. Print hello. I have. Okay. So you can see there are 4 spaces over here. If you see, there are some spaces over here. If I write it, for example, like this, so there is no indentation. By indentation, I mean so there is no proper structure. If I run this code, you can see there is a problem. Expect the indented block. It says that you have to indent, otherwise I won't run the code. Because this indentation is really necessary for code readability. I told that every creator or every inventor of the language, that is a design philosophy. The design philosophy of Python was the code should be readable. That's why I have to put 4 spaces over here. If I have to put 4 spaces over here or a tab, then only this code will run. For example, if I now run it, you will see hello. Okay. So am I clear with what is the meaning of indentations? Okay, nice. So as I said that design philosophy is necessary. So when you are coding, so you have to indent this code, otherwise this code won't run. So I have given a good example, which is a little bit bigger example than this. For example, I am creating a function here. You don't know what function is, just bear with me. If you are not understanding some terms, just bear with me. So here I am saying print this. For example, if I just delete these 4 spaces, now this is not indented. So what will it will give the error of expect the indented block. So whenever you are stuck with some error, so you can just, for example, copy this error and paste it over here. If you want to see what is the problem, because sometimes you won't remember what the error is. So you'll just search on the Google and then go over the Stack Overflow. Here we have Stack Overflow. If you are seeing my screen, we have Stack Overflow. So if I click on there, I also am showing you how to actually debug the code. So it is saying I am getting this error. Then there are people who have answered this question. As this error message indicates, you have an indented error. It is probably caused by a mix of tabs and space. So it is giving that there the block is not properly indented. Can you please indent that? Okay. So you should be having this habit of searching these errors so that you get to resolve them on yourself. So what I'll do is I'll again print this tab. So this means under this function, I am first executing this statement print. Let's just comment out this code as if this does not exist. So if I now run it, it will print this is a indented this is indented properly. If I have this condition now, if true, again I am indenting this. Print this is within the nested block. If I again just put it here, it is out of the indentation. It will give me an error. That's why I am putting a tab. Tab means 4 spaces. I am putting the 4 space so that I indented. So when I print it again, it will show this is well indented, and then it also executes this line of the code. Okay. So again, if I uncomment this, so if I write it like this, so it won't run. So under this if, only this statement will run. So if I take this print under this, so this print also comes under this true. If I just delete one of the tabs, then this comes under this definition. If you see the block of the code, so there are 3 blocks of the code. This is the first function. This is before function. This is inside the true block, and this is outside the function. If you see it that way. So if you want to write something outside of this block, so you have to indent it outside this block. For example, if I write it, it comes under this. For example, I'll say in here, I'll say x is, let me say x is equal to 10. So print if x is greater than 9. So I want this statement to get executed only. I want that under this if condition, only the first step, this is within the nested block, should get executed. That's why I'm just indenting this block in this if wala part. So if you see, if I run it, for example, I'll just comment it out. So what will happen is this is an indented block properly. So this also got this got executed, and this also got executed. If I also want this block to get executed under this if statement, okay, so I'll just put another indentation. I'll put it under this block. So it shows that these two print statements are now part of the if. So that's what I mean by indentation. Indentation is really important in Python. Without indentation, you cannot make the code run. So it will show indentation error. So under some block, if you are writing some code, you have to indent it properly. Okay. So that's why I have here mentioned the role of indentation. So Python blocks contain a group of related statements, as we saw that in that if statement wala part. This if you see this this if, it has this statement, one statement. This if is one block of code. If you see this if, it's one block of code, and then this other if is in the block of code. You can say I have used nested if inside the if. So this actually is a whole block. So with this if, we have another if inside it. So you have to also, you should also be able to get, okay, what comes under this if, how many statements are in the if. For example, if I see the outer if, this if wala part, so there are 1, 2, 3. So these 3 statements are under this if statement, under this block. So under this if statement, there is only one block, only one line. Okay, so the role of indentation is the code won't run if you don't properly indent it. So most of the times when I was starting with the coding in Python, I was feeling, because I was from C background, so what happened is I used to write a lot of messy code. I forgot to give the indentations, so then it was giving me the error. So you have to have these properly indented blocks, otherwise the code won't run and there will be some problems in there. There will be some problems. So that's the first thing, because we are now reading how to write a good code. The first thing is you should indent it properly. Okay, and the second thing is you should comment the code properly. So if you see it here, I have written you should comment the code properly. By comment, I mean when you are coding something, when you are coding a stuff, you are, for example, adding 2 numbers. At the top, you should write that I am adding 2 numbers. So this is used for documentation. As you might have heard, for example, Python is a huge repository. So people must have provided documentation for that. So otherwise, problem ये हो सकता था कि अगर बहुत सारे लोग इस कोड को करने जाते, but it is not actually understandable directly. So there must be some documentation and explanation given. So that's given by comments. So comments हमारे काम कहाँ पे आते हैं कि where we want other people to read our code. So अगर मैं कोई काम करने जा रहा हूँ, for example, if you see this screen, I'll just write a code in here. So I'll just add a code block. So if I want to sum 2 numbers, so what I'll do, I'll write like this, sum of 2 numbers. So this tells the programmer that whatever code is after that, it is used to sum these 2 numbers. For example, I'll say 10 plus 4, something like that. Basically, I'm running this and it's showing the answer is 14. So these comments are necessary. So I hope that you got why are people like, it's really difficult when you code to it's easy to forget that I need to comment the things, but it is really important skill to comment, because it is good for the documentation and for the explanation. In the first session, if you remember that I told you, you must write clean code. There's a coding style. So when somebody writes, some people have pretty notes and some have really messy notes, and people prefer to read pretty notes. So you will be collaborating with the team, और वहाँ पे ऐसा होगा कि लोगों को तुम्हारा code समझना पड़ेगा. So it should be well documented, well indented as well. So there should be explanations given. So there are different types of comments. There is a single line comment. Types of comments I mentioned here. That the first thing is there are single line comments, which I mentioned in here. There are single line comments in Python. A single line comment is that if you put a pound symbol or hash symbol that we usually call it. So if you put this symbol in front of a line, that thing will be ignored by the compiler. Compiler won't call it a statement, it won't be executed. Compiler will just ignore it. If you see it here, I just put a hash symbol in here. And then when I wrote next line, there was no hash in front of that. So this wasn't executable. If I wanted to print something, so I'm just showing it here. So first line, it was commented line. So interpreter won't read this line. So second line, if I want to print, for example, hello. So what happened is, the second line, there is no pound symbol in front of it. So this will be a normal statement which will be executed by the interpreter. And this line won't be executed by the interpreter. So this is just like a normal statement which is used to explain the code. If I enter it now, so it will be hello. So this hash is just used for a single line. So that's why it's called a single line comment. That's why I mentioned here, there a Python has single line comment. I've also given an example in here. For example, if I assign, there is a variable like this. I have written this is a single line comment, if you see it. So this is a single line comment, and here I have given a variable value 42. So if you run that, there will be no problem. So here you can also add I have also commented this code hash. You can also add comments next to the code. So this is a single line comment, and this is done by having a single pound symbol or single hash symbol. Then what we have is multi-line comments. So sometimes we need to give a long explanation. So for that we have to have multi-line comments. So in order to create multi-line comments, we use triple quotes or double like this, triple quotes. We have these triple double quotes. That means we'll write first inverted quotes like this, then second pair of inverted quotes, then third pair of inverted quotes, and there we'll close them, and we'll write in between these things. So this actually is called a multi-line comment. So in that you can write multiple lines till you don't have these three closing pairs of quotes. The code won't be considered as the code state executable, but it will be just considered as comments. So if you see it over here, so I have written, for example, these three quotes are here, and then these three quotes are here. So you can see there is even different color as well. So this is a multi-line comment. This is written in a multiple line. Alternate, you can use triple double quotes as docstring for. I'm just writing some comment in between this. If I run this, it will run without any errors. So for example, if I just remove this, and if I put just hash, so there will be errors, because now only first line is the comment. Other two lines are considered as code. If I run it, it will be, there will be cannot assign operator. There is some error. So multi-line comment is that you want to write a big paragraph or something like that for the explanation, better explanation of your code. That's why you put these multiple, triple inverted commas, and then you write anything that's in between, and you can write in multiple lines or even a single line as well. Okay, this is sometimes there is also something called as docstring. So there is a docstring when you add anything before a function. For example, you define a function in here. I have defined add two numbers a and b. So what I will write in the first line of the function after the definition, I'll give what this function does. So I have here mentioned it here. This function takes two parameters as their input. Parameters are a and b. A is an integer number, and then a is the first number, the second number. Then it returns again the sum. So this all is mentioned in these multi-line comments. So this usually is called docstring. So there actually is no difference if you see syntactically between a docstring and a multiple line comment. But this docstring is usually used in functions or classes. So where it provides, or for a module which says that what is the function of this particular class, what does this do, what does a particular function do. If you see it over here, I also mentioned it in the code. For example, add these two numbers. You can see add number, it's a function. Okay. And then you can call help function. Help means that this function will call. So if I write, let me do one thing first. So let me just remove this. I'll just remove it. Okay, so there is no docstring. So if I run this code, okay, so here should help on function add numbers in module. There is nothing, no docstring was there, so it did not give anything. But if I again write this docstring back, so now if I call this help add number, so it will access this docstring basically. So it will print it out. So now you can see it over here. Add number. This is a function which takes two arguments. It gives everything. People usually need help when they do some task, and they'll call this help. If there is a docstring written in the function or in the class, it will just output what is this class doing. Okay. So there are two ways of accessing this. You can say help add numbers, or you can just print add. There are two ways. For example, this is the first way, help, and then I call this function. And the second way is you can just write print dot hyphen the dash dash doc dash dash. I can just write this much. It will be able to print that doc. I can otherwise comment this one out or execute this. So these two are doing the same function. This help add numbers and print add numbers or doc. Okay. So I have even mentioned in here. If you see on the notes as well, I have mentioned that there's a difference between docstring and the multi-line comment. The first is docstring is written in functions or classes to show how to use the program, because if you buy anything, the manual comes within it. So you have to show how and what this program does. So you have to write some documentation in there. So multi-line comment is just show what a code block does. Okay. So is this clear? How do we write? Why do we write docstring? Why do we have to comment the code and stuff like that? Is it clear? Or any questions regarding this? Any question regarding the software patterns? Because I hope you will be working with a big team, and when you will go to good corporates like Microsoft, Amazon, Mindtree, and stuff like that, there you will have to write a lot of code, and for your code it should be clean. Other people should be able to understand it. That's why I invested some time into good coding methods. So how should actually write doc strings for your functions or for your classes. You should comment your code blocks. There are multi-line comments, single-line comments as well. So I'll stop here for a few seconds to take some questions if anyone has any random question, if he wants to ask or if she wants to ask. Is everyone understanding though? Nice that you guys are understanding. So I'll just call it a random name. Whose name should I call? Zahid, are you understanding? Just unmute your mic so that I'll feel you guys are interacting with me.
Yes, sir.
Nice. And Zubair, he just gave a thumbs up. Who else is there? Riyan, everybody get thumbs up actually. So you are able to understand me perfectly, so it's good. So now we'll move up to identifiers. The first thing is we cover what Python is. So what are the good coding practices? I think you all have heard about these comments, doc screens and things like that. But I wanted you people to at least know why are they so important and where are they used basically. Oh, some people are telling me to allow them join. Okay, just wait a while. Some person is messaging me. See, Omar is not in the meeting, so I just will allow him. Just wait for a second. Sorry for the interruption. I'll just reply. I am unable to see him though. Okay, let's continue. The other topic that we'll deal is identifiers. Okay, so this is the topic that so we have to name things. For example, you have to give variable names. We'll look in what variable means. We'll look in what functions means, what class means, what an object means, everything that we'll look in. But we have to name these things. So there are various entities such as classes are there, functions are there, variables are there. So first the thing is you have to name them. So any name given to this class, function, variables, they are called identifiers. Okay. So basically, the word itself says identifier means you are using it to identify something. For example, if you are naming some function, you'll write def. Def is actually a keyword. Then you'll name the function. Okay. And there are certain rules for writing these identifiers. If you see, you can use combination of characters, both lowercase and uppercase, and digits from 0 to 9, and the underscore. Okay. This is the first rule. Rule 1. So rule 1 is you can use combination of characters, uppercase A to Z, lowercase A to Z, digits from 0 to 9 and underscore. If I show you the coding window right here, so here you can see it. For example, I have mentioned my variable here. It's a variable. So my variable, it is using the lowercase letters and this underscore symbol. So if I run it and if I print it as well, for example, I'll also print it. Print my variable, let's see. So here you can see the value of the variable was 42 and the 42 was visible on the screen as well. So this is the first rule. The first rule was that you can use the combination of lowercase letters from A to Z and uppercase letters from A to Z, digits from 0 to 9 and an underscore. And the rule is you cannot start the name of name of an identifier with a digit. So you cannot use a digit in front. You can use digit maybe at the end, but you cannot use that at the front. So for example, if I show you in the code here, this is my variable. I haven't started with this. If I write my variable, you will see it will give me the error. Invalid decimal literal. Because this is not allowed. You cannot start the name of the identifier with the numeric letters. You can though write it in between or somewhere. So for example, you can write it here. You can write it in between 1. You can write 1 here. It will be easily able to print this. So if you see it here, so this is 42. But the first rule, second rule says that you cannot start an identifier with a digit. So this is not for here. I have mentioned that one variable is kind of considered as invalid. Okay. So you must start it with either underscore or uppercase or lowercase letters. You cannot start with a digit. Then you cannot use a reserved keyword. For example, if you want to name a variable, you cannot use a reserved keyword. So if I by reserved keywords, I mean, for example, here I have for. For is a reserved keyword. If I see it here, you cannot use it. It will give me error. Okay. So here I have used for is equal to 5. I use it as a variable name. If I just run this cell, it will show invalid syntax. So So you cannot use reserved keywords as your identifiers, as your name of the classes, functions, and things like that. Okay. The other thing is you cannot use special symbols. You cannot use special symbols like exclamation, at the rate, pound symbol, dollar, percent, and other symbols like that as identifiers. So it will give an error. So in the code, if you can see, if I just run this as a special symbol, at the rate, for example, I just mentioned at the rate special variable. This should give me the result invalid. You can see it's invalid. So you cannot use at the rate, even you cannot use percentile. If I use percent, again it will give me some error if you see it. Okay, if I write exclamation, this is not allowed as well. Anywhere this is not allowed, not just in the start, it's not allowed anywhere. So if I write exclamation here, it's not allowed. Okay, so broadly, I'll again reiterate the rules. Whenever you are naming a thing, the first thing is it should be a combination of small a to small z, and then capital A to capital Z, and digits should be 0 to 9, and underscore is allowed. Okay, and variable name cannot start with, identifier name cannot start with a digit, and reserved words cannot be used as identifiers. I also showed you the examples in the code environment as well. Here I have written them as well. Is everybody understanding?
Yes, sir.
Umar, are you there? I am seeing you there, but
Yes, sir.
yes. Okay, so you are actually messaging me. I had to interrupt in between. Okay, so what are the topics that we learned so far? The first thing is we learned what is Python, where are the applications of Python. Then we saw a little bit how to write good code, what are comments and things like that. Then we'll move to variables. What basically a variable in terms of Python mean. These things what I'm speaking are really generic terms. They're not specific to Python only. If you see. So these things are also in other languages as well. I'm just like putting them into the right context. Where are they used and how are these things used in Python? But if you speak in other languages as well, there are same concepts as well. Okay. So let's now go to the concept of variables. What is a variable? So in Python, variables basically are memory locations. If you see it here, they are just used to store some data. So if there is for example, everything in the computer is basically stored in computer memory. So there are a lot of types of memory, secondary, primary, there is RAM, registers, cache and stuff like that. So there is a lot of types of memory. So usually in the primary memory, these memory locations, so if I have to store, for example, my name, this is a variable name. So when I assign it, for example, a string Musawir, so what will happen is, in the memory, it will just create a block of memory and it will write this Musawir into that block. Okay. So if anyone asks you what is a variable is nothing, just a memory location that is there in your PC. Okay. So it distinguishes other memory locations as well. For example, rules of variables are the same. When you want to create a variable, the rules are of those of identifiers, which we saw. For example, in here I can write, if you can see the coding environment again. So there I have written a lot of definitions as well. You can just read them out. But the first thing is variable. If x is a variable, I have assigned it 42. So this is assigning an integer value. So 42 is an integer value. It's a real number value. So we usually call these as integer number 42, 43. I assume that you know the definition of integers. So for example, name, I have assigned it John. So this John is a string. It's basically a string data type. So again, is valid. Again, all of these are variable. X is a variable. Name is a variable. Is valid is a variable. Okay. So this is an integer variable. This now is a string variable. This now is a Boolean variable. Okay. So how I have claimed it, there is a function known as type. Okay. So if I have assigned x is equal to 42 as an integer, I have given name John, that is string. I have given a Boolean value. Now I am storing their types in this type x, type name, and type valid. I am storing their name, their types. So when I write this, so you can see this x is a type of integer class. This name is a type of string class. This is valid is a type from Boolean class. So if you don't know what these classes and objects means, Python basically in Python everything is an object. So that's why it's called pure object-oriented programming. So in the future sessions we learn what an object-oriented programming means. But here I want to show you that. So this variable can be of any type. It can be either of string type, it can be of integer type, it can be Boolean type. Okay. So variable basically is nothing but just a memory location if you see it. So whenever you are creating some variable, I'll show you a beautiful thing probably. I'll show you, and that, for example, if I write x is equal to 13, okay, and I want to see its memory location, I'll say print let's say id of 13. Id of 13 will give me the location where this x is. Okay, so it is giving me the location of this x is equal to 13. If I write and the block, if I write y is equal to 45, I'll again write print id of y. So this will give me the location where y is. Okay, so you here I got the location, and you can see the locations are pretty much different. But let me show you something. If I write x is equal to 13 also, if I run it again, can you see these locations are similar? But still the name x and y is pretty different, but the locations that came out are similar. So can anyone answer why is it so? Anyone? Okay, so you are saying the value is same. So what happens if the value is same? It's in terms of CS. Let me just show you some magic. I'll say 12560 something like this, and I'll copy it, and we'll see if these values are similar as well. Can you see the locations are different? Because these values were same. So when I just wrote 3 previously, I wrote 3 here and 3 here. Let's run it again. You will see the locations are pretty much similar. Not pretty much similar, they are actually similar. They are equal actually. But when I wrote these numbers, when I checked the locations, you can see the locations are different. So there is something sorcery going on. Koi jadugiri chal rahi hai if I have the values. Whenever you give an answer, I am trying to like defend myself. No, this is not right, and why is it not right? And probably you are partially correct as well. So any other answers? Why is this happening? If I am giving the values, let's say even I am giving the value 10, or I am giving the value 10 here. So if you see in the both of these cells, when I run it, it is showing some ID, it is showing some location, and then when I am again running it, it is showing again the same location. I think fives were fives, huh? You now hit the right nail. Right. So what happens actually, there is a range. So if a number is smaller, that's what 5 is meant by there are less number of bits. So what Python does is Python basically stores it. And when we define that thing again, so what it does is if a number is less than a certain range, you have to check that range in the documentation. If it is less than that certain range, then it will reuse that location. Otherwise, it will create a new variable because looking takes a lot of time. So for example, if we write 200 here, 200 is still a smaller number. So here 200, the location of these things are expected to be same. Okay, so we got the same locations. But if we write a number, for example, which is a 5-digit number, something like this. So I hope the location should not be similar. And you can see it. So it depends on the Python's implementation. Inventor actually, when they were creating the language, they said if a number is reused, we can look in the memory stack and we'll see if that number exists, and we can point the pointers towards that. And this X is actually pointing to that thing. If I write it in here, so for example, when I write 10, so this 10 gets created in the memory. Then when I had this X points to this 10. So when I again use Y is equal to 10, what happened actually? So this was a smaller number. So the thing that happened is this 10 was already there, so it just pointed and the pointer towards it. But when I had number 1, 2, 6, 8, 9, 2, something like this, so this number got created initially. It was pointed X. Now the creators or inventors, they have made a choice that when there are large number, we won't search through the space. So what they did is when I again said Y is equal to this number, so it won't create a new it won't create a pointer only. It will create a new location as well. Actually, I have tendency to go into the compilers of what happened there, so I don't want to bore you with these things, but you can see this thing. It can be a good interview question as well. If somebody wants to test your Python knowledge, okay, why are these so? So you can say that till a certain range, Python looks for the things that are inside it. But after it goes away from that certain range, it does not look. It will make a new object basically. Am I clear? Okay, nice. So now we'll go to this variable assignments, how we assign these things to the variables. As we saw previously, we can assign an integer value. You can see it here. For example, age, this is a variable. Variable is just now a memory location. So when we are defining a variable, we're actually giving a memory location that we want something to store in. So this age we read is equal to 30. That means I'm assigning an integer variable. So if I have this price basically is a floating value. By float means that it has a floating point. So there is a separate class for this. So you can see that we're assigning 19.99 in here. So this is a floating point number, so we're assigning it that way. We can assign strings as well. You can see this is a string. Okay, we can assign a longer string. In the greetings I have assigned a longer string. We can assign a list of numbers. You can see this, there's a list of numbers. Okay, so if you see it in the code, I have also can run that cell. So assignment can be of any type, it can be of any data type. So if I run it, you can see it. So I have just printed the age. For example, my age is 31, because here I have reinitialized it. Basically the first value of the age was 30. So then when I ran it again, it got, so it scrapped it the value and again overwritten the value. So if I just comment these things out, so that now the age will be 30. So you can have a reassignment as well, what we call reassignment. If you want to assign something initially and then you want to change it, so you can reassign that value to the age. For example, if I just do like this, age is equal to age plus 1. I think whoever is comfortable with the other program language, they'll know that this variable age will get updated to 31, as you can see. Okay, so if I am printing this line right here, for example below this age, so it will print the value of this age. The age is 30 when it was printed here. So from here we learn that it goes line by line. So when we reach this line, so it showed the new value, the value that we reassigned it actually. Okay, so this is the first type of statement, assignment statement that we do. Then we have multiple assignment statements. Okay, in the multiple assignment statement, I mean that I can create many variables and I can assign them different values. For example, if you see this, I have written a comma b is equal to 10 comma 20. This 10 will get assigned to this a, this 20 will get assigned to this b. Okay, I can write like this, a comma b comma c is equal to 10 comma hello comma, for example, some other floating point number 19.99. So this is the beauty of the language. So you in a single statement, I did a multiple assignment. So this a will go to this 10, this b will have this value of hello, and this c will have the value of 19.99. So this is how you do multiple assignments in Python. So if you see it here, for example, a and b, let me print a and b, print a comma b. I'll just print these two values. You can see the a is equal to 20. I can just write hello to this. I can assign hello. So you can see hello and 20. Okay, I can even assign a list. For example, if I write c here, so I'll assign a list in here. For example, 1 comma 2 comma 3, and then probably I'll close the list and you can see it, and now I'll print the c. So you can see in the single assignment, in the single line, I did a multiple assignment thing. So
But
yes,
screen turned black.
Oh, okay.
Sir, it is not visible.
Is it visible? Just tell me when it is not visible, because I have to switch the screens and sometimes I miss the switching of the screens. So what I am saying is, for this first variable a, for the second variable b, for the second variable c, I did a multiple assignment statement. By multiple assignment statement, I wrote that hello will get assigned to a, this 20 will get assigned to this b, this list of numbers 1, 2, 3 will get assigned to c. When I print this ABC, you can see the results over here. Okay, so that's what I mean by multiple assignment state. You can have a single line of code and you can do the multiple assignment there. Okay, I think we have discussed about the storage locations as well. What storage location means, basically how they store it. So I have also shown in the example, if there are smaller numbers, Python basically looks into its memory if there is a smaller number present. So then it does not create a new object. So if a number is bigger, then it creates a new object. Okay, so that's what is the meaning of storage location. If anybody asks you what is a variable, variable is nothing but a memory location in the Python's memory. So if you want to delve deeper into this, there are different types of memories as well. So there's a memory type called as heap, for example, a stack memory is there. So we don't want to delve into those things because then we'll go too deep into compilers, how these work. I just want to give you the first-hand experience of the things. You might have already learned these things into other language, but I just wanted to put them in the perspective in terms of Python. Okay, I'll just pause here for 10 to 20 seconds to take questions if anyone has some questions regarding these.
Yes, sir. Why does not increment operator work in Python?
Why does
आपने उधर x plus 1 लिखा,
हाँ
x plus plus 2 नहीं.
x plus plus क्यों नहीं लिखा? Choice of creators, they didn't want that plus plus, they hated that plus plus.
Why?
You should ask that to that the inventor of the Python. तुमने ऐसा choice क्यों किया? He'll say मेरी मर्जी. So they don't use plus plus operator. Plus plus is if anybody doesn't know, it's an increment operator. So it usually increments anything by one. There are pre-increment, post-increment in C++. So he wanted to make the language simple. So he has his own philosophy. So he said, I won't take this plus plus. He has also deleted pointers. Then the question could be, ये pointers क्यों नहीं है Python में? Choice of
Any other
inventors. Huh?
any other operator you used it?
He has even many. He has other operators as well. So whenever a language is made, it is the choice of designer to use whatever he wants in the language. Basically, if you want to have increment in Python, you can make the Python. The Python that we are using is actually called C Python, if you know that. You know that Python has other flavors as well. There is a C Python. There is
No,
the
sir.
Java Python as well. There is a lot of, if you go on documentation of the Python, so you will see different things of the Python. There is C Python. There is different versions of Python. So that I want to delve into because it's a huge subject that's dealt in system side of the computer science. So in that we learn about these theory of computation and then how they are used to formulate the things, and then we do compiler design. So how to design compilers. So in that you can see if you want to write your own language, you can make a language itself. So there is a front end of the compiler, there's a back end of the compiler. As I said, there are multiple stages of the compilers. So जब Python बनाई गई, so the designer took the choice कि मैं इसमें plus plus नहीं रखा. The plus plus is meaningless to him. Okay. Any other questions? It is a good question though. You should ask these such questions. तो अगर कोई किसी लैंग्वेज में वो है तो इसमें क्यों नहीं यार? If there is a way. Am I audible to everyone though? Nice. So now we'll see data types. What are data types in Python? So first let me explain what data type means. पहले ये जानने की कोशिश करते कि data type क्या होता है. So when we speak or when we write, we call out certain, for example, things. For example, अगर हम लिखते हैं तो हम कभी numbers लिखते हैं. So sometimes we write numbers. Okay. कभी कभी हम क्या लिखते हैं? We write alphabets. So कभी मैं ऐसे लिखूँगा 10. Sometimes I'll write line. Things like that. Sometimes I'll write 10.44. So these things are different. So to a human it's also different. To a computer it's also different because computer has to understand what sort of things are there. Because these real numbers are differently dealt by computer, and this floating point number is differently dealt in computers. Okay. So for example, how if you see a video file has that format dot, for example, MP4. If you see an image file dot JPEG. What are these significant? So for when softwares have to read, there is a header in each of the file. अब कंप्यूटर को कैसे पता है कि ये जो बाइनरी मेरे पास पड़ा है ये वीडियो ही है. So there is this format or extensions or some these extensions basically are headers for softwares. They have to read the header first. अच्छा ये वीडियो वाली फाइल है तो इसको वीडियो प्लेयर से चलाना है. So I understand my point. So computer have to understand what sort of file it is. अगर उसके पास कोई image है तो image viewer have to be triggered वो image दिखाने के लिए. So it has a header in the file. So every file is basically a binary. तो मैंने बोला हर एक फाइल ones and zeros में है. तो for computer everything is equal. तो इसको कैसे पता है कि ये image है, this thing is a video, this thing is an audio. Basically there is some headers attached to it. तो ये header को read करके वो पता करता है कि कौन सा सॉफ्टवेयर ट्रिगर करना है इस फाइल को चलाने के लिए. You might have seen if you sometimes have misclicked on an image and you open, for example, a video in image viewer or something. It is not playing. It shows some gibberish like 100 and there are some symbols like that. Okay, so you actually just click the wrong software for that. So how computer identifies this? So there are these headers attached. Similar happens with the data. Data can be numbers, alphabet, strings can be there, floating points can be there, and it depends on how much memory location will be allocated. Okay, so if we have this 10 number, it's an integer data type, so we have to call it as an integer. Then line, it is a string type data type. So computer will interpret it differently because the operations that are possible on integers are not possible on strings. हम लोग दो integers को multiply कर सकते हैं, for example 10 into 4, but you cannot multiply a line with a king. Okay, that's why we have different data types in computers. So ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि we should have a similar data type कि इतना tension क्यों होना, but for a data type we have different operations as well. So in here the first line that you will see is Python is a dynamically typed language. So if somebody comes from a background of C, C++, they might have seen when they define something, they write integer, for example, number 1, and then they'll have this int says the computer that this number is an integer. This is actually, these languages are called statically typed language. Statically typed language. So in that upfront you have to mention what is the data type. Okay, but Python was made in such a way that they use it dynamically typed, so that you don't have to mention the type of the variable. From the data itself, it will know the type of the variable. Okay. So it's a dynamically typed language. I also told you statically typed, like C, C++, Java. All these languages are statically typed language. You have to mention what is the variable that you are using. If you have to use a string, you have to write string, like this in Java. Or in, for example, in C++, you have to write for example, character array of 10 characters. This is also some sort of string. So here in C, C++, Java, you have to mention the type of the data upfront before using that variable. But Python is a dynamically typed language. That means that at the runtime, I don't want to go into what runtime means. So there is a compile time, there is a runtime thing. I don't want to delve into details because I told that comes under this compiler subject. Runtime, basically there is a binding happening and we don't want to delve into the details. So at that time, it processes what is the type of this variable. If you say x is equal 10, it will say this x is of type integer that we saw previously. If x is equal to string hello, then it will say x is of type string. And you don't have to say explicitly string, then name the variable, then give it, as is done by the C, C++, Java. This is dynamically typed language. So if you now see these data types, there are a lot of data types available in Python. I'll just share the screen and I'll show you how many data types are there. So there is numeric. In numeric, for example, in 1, 2, 3, there are integers, there are floats, and there are complex numbers. Okay. Then there are dictionaries. Then there are boolean. There is a set. There are sequence type like strings, list. I have just pasted this, like giving credit to those geeks for geeks. They have made a good table of these. So we'll see each of these things, each of the what numeric is, what is there, what is an integer, complex number में क्या होता है, float में कैसे कैसे चीजें होती हैं. We'll see all of these things. Okay. So going to the first thing is numeric type. Numeric type में हमारे पास क्या क्या है? The first thing is integer type. Integer क्या होता है? Which is integral values like 2, 4, -4, 8. It won't have the point in it. So it won't have 2.1. It won't have things like that. So this is called floating point basically. If you have an integral value, these are integers. So when you assign a is equal to, this is of type integer. So floating type means that there is a point. This is called floating point because this point can be everywhere. So you can write 22.83. So this is a floating point. So it is an the data type, floating data type. So we use real numbers, like for example, if you have to mention 1 by 3, 1 by 3 is equal to 0.33 something. So this is actually a floating point number. So then in the mathematics, as I said, the inventor of this Python was mathematician. So it also supports complex numbers. In your +1 or maybe in your class 10th or so, you might have read about complex numbers because these complex numbers are used in quantum computation. They are used in really good calculations. So that's why it also supports complex numbers. Complex numbers, as you see, that they have a real part and an imaginary part. And an imaginary part. So this is real part, this is imaginary part. So this also supports these complex numbers. Just going into the code back and I'll show you, I'll just run these things. So here age is an integer, price is an float, and this imaginary number is of type complex. And you can even print the type. So you can just write print and then type. Type is actually a function which tells the type, and I want to see what is the type of imaginary number. So imaginary number is type, it will show me. It's of class complex. Okay. So within the numeric type, we have 3 types. The first type is integers, which stores integral values like 1, 2, 5, -5, 2, 3, 6, and something like that. Then we have floating point numbers. Floating point numbers, in those floating point numbers, we have numbers like 19.99, 18.63, like basically the numbers which have point in it. Even if you write 30.0, 30.0 is also a floating point number. If I write 30.0, it now becomes a floating point number. Initially it was an integer without this 0. If I write 0.0, then it becomes a floating point number. Then imaginary number, as I said, like it has a real part and a complex part as well. So this is an imaginary number. Then the second thing that we have is text type. Okay, text type of data. For example, if you see, we have strings. So you can say name Alice, or for example name, let me speak a random name, let's say Zubair. Okay, so Zubair name here is a string. Okay, a string is enclosed usually in the double quotes. Sometimes you can also use single quotes. You can write the string in the single quotes as well. So I have an example of strings over here. You can just see, for example, name, it's Alice, and message is, for example, hello world. here we have used double quotes, and here we have used single quotes. So you can print these names as well. So print, so you can just put name and then run it. You can see it prints the word Alice. So if I print the type of the name, it will print type string. So this is of type string. As I said, Python is a pure object oriented language. Everything here is an object. So this belongs to class string. Basically, this is an object of class string, this name. Similar with the message as well. So we covered the first type of data, that is integer data type, in which we had numeric data, in which we had integer, we had floats, and we had complex numbers. Then in the textual thing, we had, again, reply to me at least. I'm expecting a reply from you people. You can, like, somebody can unmute if I'm audible, and then you can interact with me as well. So I feel that at least you are not sleeping. So in the text type, we have this string classes, and then comes the sequence types. Okay, the first thing is list. We'll delve deeper into those when we'll go to data structures. Here we are just seeing data types now, so we'll see how to use this list and stuff like that. A list is nothing but a collection of. It's a collection of items. If you see it here, it's a collection of items. And here I have mentioned the word mutable. Mutable means you can change it. By change, I mean, for example, if you define a list is defined by these square braces. If I write, for example, a list of fruits, so you can see apple, banana, cherry, then you can replace this cherry, you can put some other things in there. So you can change these things. If something is changeable, we call it mutable. By mutability is that you can change it. You can reassign the values. For example, if you write a is equal 10, then you wrote a is equal 11. So this was mutable. Okay, some things are unmutable. So a list is just a collection of items which are mutable, if you see it. Then we have a tuple. A tuple can be represented like this. So there are differences between tuple and things, because tuple is immutable. You cannot change the elements. So for example, if we have the tuple of coordinates here, 3, 4, if you want to reassign something to coordinates, it won't happen. You cannot reassign the values. It will show it is immutable. Okay. Then we have a sequence type range. So range, for example, if you write range 1 to 10, so it will output a list of numbers from 1 to 10. If you see it, basically 1 to 9, I guess it does not take last number into consideration. So we can see them. So just going to the coding environment, the first type of the sequence was list. I said list, here is a list of fruits. We'll just print this list of fruits. Print, and we'll say fruits. So it should print the list of fruits that we defined: apple, banana, and cherry. I said it is mutable. So here you can see it is mutable. I mentioned it here, it is mutable. So if I just change, for example, I'll say fruits, it is indexed from 0, 1 and 2. I'll say fruits of 2. For example, fruits of say 2 is equal to some other fruit. Let's say it is mango. I'll assign it the mango. So you can see if I now again put fruits, you can see I changed this cherry to mango. That's why I mean by mutability, you can modify it. Okay. Then comes the tuple. Tuple is again a list of, it should be similar items. Or here you can put numbers as well. For example, if I put instead of this cherry a number. Okay. So I would mutate it here. So it need not to be homogeneous. Here you are just putting apple is a string, banana is a string, then a number. You can see the list will print apple, banana, and 10, because these are different data types. So list is sort of a thing where you can put different things. But here it is sort of a list, but it should have similar numbers. This tuple, it should have similar numbers. So I'll just go back. So I showed you the example of mutability and like similar elements. So if I have these coordinates now, so if I want to change coordinates, okay, because there are two coordinates 1, I want to change it to, for example, let's say 6. Let's first print it without doing any change, without mutating it. So I'll just change it. You can see coordinates are 3, 4. But if I mutate it, if I try to change the coordinates, look what will happen. It will give me an error. It's saying tuple object does not support item assignment. That means you cannot change it. Once assigned, you cannot change the tuple. That's what I mean. Tuple is unmutable. Elements cannot be changed. And it should have similar elements. For example, in the tuple, if I have 5 in here, so you can just uncomment, you can comment out this line, and it prints 3, 4, 5. But if you put a string, for example, hello, and if you run it now, actually it does support in here. So there's different versions of Python are also there. So it depends on the version. I'm using Python 3.10. Maybe they have modified the version. But the main thing that you have to take out of these, the main difference is that list, You can mutate the list. You cannot mutate the tuple. Then we have range, as I said. For example, if I want to, I am using this range 1 to 10. It will print the numbers. You can see the range is gives a range of numbers from 1 to 10. Sometimes you use in the for loop the range of this. It basically gives a list of these things. So when you have the range of 1 to 10 means it will go from 1, 2, 3, 4 up till 9. So till last number. So this range is also a sequence of numbers. So basically it comes in sequence data type. If you see it here, I have mentioned it. Sequence data types. So first thing was list, then we had tuple, then we had range as well. Then we have mapping data types, in which we have dictionary. So what do you mean by a dictionary in a normal sense? In dictionary, we had something for which we have a key and pair values. So if you look at the English dictionary, English to Urdu, so we have some, for example, words apple. So its meaning is written in front of it, save. Okay. So this is a key and this is a value. So we have key value pairs in a dictionary. So now we are discussing about the data types. Just telling you the whole picture. The first thing that we discussed, coming back, we discussed about numeric types. In that we had 3 types: integer, float, and complex number. In text type we had just string. In sequence type we had list, tuple, and range. And then now we are mapping data types. So there we have dictionary. So dictionary has 2 things. It has key and value. For example, if I have to mention a dictionary, I'll say person. If you see it here, I have mentioned a person here. Then first name, its name is Alice. Okay, age is 30. City, it lives in New York. So this basically is dictionary. So if I call name, it will give Alice, because this is its key and it has, this is its key and this is value. So if you see, we have pairs of values. The dictionary is defined by these curly braces. So we just put commas in to separate out the elements. If you can see here, name, Alice, age, 30, city, New York. Okay, so you can see it in the code as well. If I just wanted to show you the code, so in here you have this dictionary. If I want to say person, for example, I'll put a name. I think it should run. It says with the name key, its name is Alice. If I want to put see age, it can give me age 30. It gives me the other element back. Okay. Did you understand dictionary? Dictionary is based on what's called as hash maps, and that will again develop some time back if we get the time, and we'll delve into those in subsequent sessions. What are hash maps and things like that. There's a lot to read about these things, how they are implemented. I just want to get the bird's eye view first. So what are the tools that we have in Python? अगर कोई भी काम करने सीखना होता है, the first thing is to have a set of tools जो मुझे use करने, और उन tools से क्या कर सकता हूँ. If we see, अगर हम ऐसी, for example, we go to a shop in which there are car mechanics, तो car mechanic को पहले कार के part पता होने चाहिए कि ये part होता है. Then he should also know the tools he is going to use. Then he will see how to use them. So right now we are seeing कि कौन कौन से tools है Python में. So हमारे पास एक tool kit आ जाएगा. Then how to use that tool kit we'll look further. That we will develop. कि जब हम machine learning में कोई algorithm implement करेंगे, then we'll say, okay, I am using a list here, I am using this thing here, I am using a dictionary here. So is the concept of dictionary is clear?
Yes, sir.
Nice. So dictionaries, again reiterate, if somebody missed it, dictionary has key value pairs. So each element is a key and value. So you can just go to a key and get its value from there. Then we have set types as well. So there are 2 types of sets. You also have read this in +1 or +2 sets. There is a chapter. So we have sets as well. So in sets we also have curly braces, but we don't have we don't have pairs of values. We have just one value. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can see it. So this is a set. It's a collection of unique items. It does not accept duplicates. What I mean by that, you can check it. For example, here we have unique numbers. If I put and the 2 in here, and then let's say I'll print this unique numbers. I'll print these unique numbers. As you can see that I have 1 and 2. I have 2 2s here. So as I said, in the set there is no duplicate elements allowed. So when you run it, you can just see there are only 5 numbers. It removes duplicates basically. There are no duplicates allowed. So if I write and the duplicates, say for example 5, again you can see there is no change. So it does not allow duplicate elements. The set does not allow duplicate elements. But set does allow us mutability. You can change it, you can mutate it. Okay. And let's go back. This was our original set. Okay. So this was our original set without this 2. So if I want to mutate it, I'll just say unique numbers, and I'll assign, for example, at 0th index, I'll assign some, let's suppose 9. Okay, then I'll print these unique numbers. Is it indexed though? Let me just check it. Is it indexed? That's why you have these surprises and you get to learn along the way. Even set is not scriptable basically. The thing is, you cannot script a set. You cannot access its element because, as I said, that it does not have that order. So that's the problem. You can mutate the whole set. You can assign it other set as well, but you cannot. It is not indexable. I'll say what is the meaning of index. For example, list. Let me just go to this. So what I mean by indexable, if I create a list of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the computer's memory, they are stored like this. So there are indices 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if it's named as ARR, so when you say ARR of 2, it will bring this element 3. Set is not indexable. That's why I was trying to mutate that one element. But then I suddenly, after reading the error, I came to know that this is not scriptable. Why? There is an obvious reason, because it does not keep the memory like this. It does not have the values stored in this way. So it cannot be indexed. Okay, though you can mutate it. Then we have something called as frozen set. Frozen set means if you do not want to change anything. So this is frozen set actually. It is similar to a set, but it's immutable. Okay, if you see it here, are you able to see it? So unique numbers, we have a set which is basically mutable. You can change the whole set. You can assign it some other set. But if you want this set to be immutable, you can just define it as a frozen set. Frozen set will give it the values you cannot mutate. Okay. You came to know that. One more point is that set is also not indexable. You cannot index a set. You can index a list, you can index a tuple, but you cannot index it. So we have to learn all of these things in detail, but here we just wanted to get a bird's eye view what are the things that are present there. Then there is other type of data that's Boolean data type. Boolean either true or false. Some things that we use in conditions. If something is true, then this. So sometimes we want a result to be true or false. जैसे कि मैं यहाँ पे example दो, is Umar Bashir present in the class? The answer is yes or no, true or false, true. Let's say is for example Ronnie Coleman in the class? No. So there are true yes or no values for some things. They are called Boolean data types. So they either take value of true or they take value of false. So for example in the code itself we can mention is valid is equal to true, that this value is true basically. So then we have none type as well. So by none there is a keyword. There is a keyword none defined in the Python. If you remember what previously we discussed about the keywords. So you can also describe this none variable. That means it has none type. Basically, if you want to say there is no type involved in, you usually say it's of none type. It basically is a type. So if you see, this is some sort of what we can say. There are some things like that. I just forgot the name. It's a paradoxical thing. This is the none type. It is a left type. None means basically nothing. It's a paradox. So none basically means nothing, but there is a type of nothing. Okay. So I think you got the image of this thing clear, how many data types are present there. So again, just showing you the table. So we had numeric data type in which we had integer, we had float numbers, we had complex numbers. Then we had mappings in which we call it the dictionary. Then we had booleans as well. Then we had sets in which we had a simple set and a frozen set. Then the sequence type, we had strings, list, tuple, and a range as well. Okay. So from this, you sort of have that bird's eye view. Okay, what are the types of data that we can use in Python? Is there any question? I'll stop here for probably 30 seconds to take some questions. Slowly we are trying to build a bag of tools so that we can use and we can learn how to code with these tools. But these fundamentals are really necessary. In order to code these things, these are really necessary. If I just assign something and there is an error and you have to debug the code, you must know where is the problem happening. Sometimes you assign to a string value, you assign some value of integer, then there is a problem. You'll say, okay, I have learned about data structures. Sometimes, for example, there is no double involved in here. So if somebody is coming from C background, there is a data type double. So double is not actually in Python. So you might be like, okay, what is instead of double? So float actually handles everything. So in order to do good coding and have a good grip of coding, you must know these fundamentals really good. And then we'll see how to take input from the users, and if we want to take input and want to perform some operation on the input, how to do that. Okay. So because developers, we usually frequently have to engage with the users and we take input. For example, right now, if you are going on the website, you search something and then you press an enter, you search on something. That search is actually an input that you give to the YouTube search engine or the Google search engine. So you have to learn how to take inputs. Okay. Python basically offers two functions, but one of them is actually deprecated. So I haven't mentioned that here. Probably we'll also discuss that thing, but it will show an error in Python 2 version 2. So there are two inbuilt functions by which we take the input. The first thing is this input function, and the second is raw input, if I have mentioned it somewhere. Let's say here. So we have two functions. The first function itself is input, by which we take input, and the second function is raw input. Raw input. So by using these two functions, we can take input from a user, and this is supported in version of 2, and this is supported in version 2 as well as 3, this input function, but this has been deprecated in version 3. As I told you, I am using the Python version 3, so this value, this raw input, is deprecated in my system. For example, if I go to the code, I'll say how to take inputs. So here you will say, for example, user input, please enter your name, is a prompt. So it is showing me, please enter your name. Let's enter some name. Let's suppose Alice. Okay, let's give Alice, let's suppose, without the quotes. When you can give without the quotes, it doesn't matter. Okay, so you can see like it got entered. Now you can even print after this. So user print, let's say hello Alice, hello, comma, and then we'll say user's input. Okay, so again it's asking me name. Let's write now Zubair. It should say hello Zubair. So it printed this because I stored an input in user input, then I printed it. Okay, my screen is visible. I'm just testing if the screen is visible. So this is the first how we take inputs. Second, we have this raw input. But as I said that if I want to check what is the version of my Python, there is a function. I think there is a function Python dot version. So this is the function which I can call so that to get the version. Python 3, I think. Something is happening. So but you can type, this is the function by which you can type the version, and usually I have, but like Python 3 is installed in my machine. I think I can use the terminal, but I think it is not visible in here. So you can take it, take the word from it that I'm using Python 3. So this raw input won't work for me because this usually works in Python 2. So let's say something like this. So again here, if you see this user input, I have mentioned raw input. It will give error for me because raw input is not
See it again, turn black.
So
Oh, okay. Oh, it's now visible. So I was saying that my version of Python is 3.9 or something. So I cannot use this raw input function. So if I just press this, you can see the name raw input is not defined because this is defined in Python 2. As you can see here at the top, I have Python 3 IPy kernel, if you see it here. So this is not supported any longer. So it has been deprecated because Python 2 deleted it. So we now use just this input function to take the input. So how this input function actually works? Let's see that. कि ये काम कैसे करता है input function. So the first thing is when we call this input function, it waits. Okay? तो ये क्या करता है? हमारा input डालने का wait करता है. Then whatever is input to it treats it as a string. If you see it right here. So what happens is it is treating everything as a string. So जब input में कोई भी value जाता है, it is as a string. So it does not also do any express evaluation. So if you see the print, what is the difference between input and other functions? अगर मैं यहाँ पे just creating block, if I write print 2 plus 3, what will it will do is it will give me 5 because it will evaluate this expression. So if I just print this, it will print 5 because it's evaluating this. But if I write input 2 plus 3, it won't evaluate it. Okay, let's just run it. For example, I'll run this. I'll say 2 plus 3. It won't evaluate anything. It will just. So I'll enter it. So it just gave me as hello 2 plus 3. It does not evaluate it. So that's a big difference between a print function and, because print function usually it evaluates the expression. When you give it, it evaluates it. But as you can see it here, it does not evaluate it. Why it does not evaluate it? Because the thing is, actually you are not seeing my screen. You should ask, I'm coding something, you should ask, we are not able to see the screen. So what I was telling you here is, for example, if I write a print statement here, print 4 plus 9, let's suppose, like 4 plus 6. So when I will run this line, so it will give me answer as 10. So you can see there is an expression inside. 4 plus 6 is an expression itself. So it was evaluated first, and print statement, it printed the number 10. But if I say give the same input to the function input, what I am saying is that it won't evaluate it. It will give the answer as it is. For example, I'll now write 4 plus 6. So it won't evaluate it. It will say 4 plus 6 as it is. So the first difference that I am claiming is that the input function I might have even mentioned it somewhere. It gives us back the string always. If you see it here, it gives us back the string. It does not evaluate it. Okay, but it is a stopping function. By stopping function, I mean whenever you take input, it will stop there. It won't let anything happen. For example, here you can see it. I have print hello, and I'll say, let's say print AI course.
So code is not visible to us.
Nice. Okay, now code is visible. Huh? I'm just writing this print AI course. So what will happen is, till I don't give the input, it will stop me here. That's why these are called stopping functions. Input is a stopping function. It won't let me go to any other statement till I don't enter something. I'll enter 5 and then it will go to this print AI course, print hello, and something like that. So it will halt for us for the time till we give it some input. Okay. Now the thing is, we don't have to take strings always. The natural question arises that we don't have to take the input as strings always. We need some numbers. We may need floating point numbers. We may need dictionaries as well. So what to do in that scenario? If you want to take an input as an integer, so for that we have what is called as typecasting. So we need to change the type. So typecasting is a method of converting one data type from other. Like in simple terms, if you want to convert integer into float, you can do by that typecasting. Typecasting is a method, or typecasting is a way in which we can convert one data type from another to another data type. So basically, it can also be called as data type conversion if you see it here. Okay, the first data type casting is typecasting to integers. So if I am taking the string value, I need to convert it to integer. So what I'll do is, I'm just writing a function int. Okay, if I take string 5, as I told you that if 5 is in quotes, it means it's a string. So when you write this int in braces, so it will get converted into integer. So let me show it programmatically. So we'll say from here, let's suppose I'll just add a cell. So for example, I wrote a is equal to 5. Okay, now I'll print type of a. What's the type of a?
Again, stop.
Nice that you are mentioning. Nice. Okay, a is equal to, here I am, a is equal to 5. I mentioned it as a string. If I just print it, so it will say, here we have missed one phrase. So it will say class string. The a is of class string. But if I want to typecast it, typecast means I want this 5 to get converted into an integer. What I'll do is, I'll say int of a, because now a has the value and I'll assign it to a. Now I'll print it, and you can see class int. So basically, I changed the type of integer which previously was a string to integer. I changed the data type of string into an integer by using this function int of a, and I did an assignment over here. Similar thing, because we are getting from input function, what we are getting is, we are getting an integer. If you see this line, so here I am saying input an integer, but as I told you that input function returns, it gives back a string value. But I need to change that string value into a number. For example, let's go here, and I am 50. I am giving 50. Now if I enter it, it will change this integer value into 50. That's why I'm saying int of user input. Int of user input means basically this user input initially was a string when I took the input, but I have to convert it into integer and assign it to this integer value. So this is what is called a typecasting to integer. Similar things are also available in float. So you can do a typecasting in float as well. So for that we have a function float. So we'll write float, and then in between what data type we have, it will change it into float. Okay. Then we have also like int, float, and then we can basically change some things to the string as well. So if you want to change a number to the string, you can just write string method. There is a method of string as well. So I hope that typecasting is clear. If you have one type of data and you want to convert into other type of data, okay, you can do that. But a natural question arises: can we convert a string if it is ABC? Can we convert it to an integer? We cannot, because basically this is not a number. Let's try it. So if this was ABC, okay, so you can see invalid literal for integer, because this is not an integer itself. How can I convert it? Okay, if I write hello, can hello be converted? No, it cannot be. But if I write 2.0, it can be. 2.0 is actually a floating point, like I wanted to write an integer. So it can, the 2 can be converted into an integer. For example, if I write 5, this also can be. So if I write it in float, this can be converted into float. But if I write a number, for example, say hi, it is not a number, this is a string, so it cannot be converted. It will give an error, could not convert to the string. But anything can be converted into a string. So if we have a number like 5, so we can convert it into a string. Okay, we need to define, I think it's capital S or something like that. Sometimes you will get these errors and you will have to figure okay how it is spelled and things like that. So you can convert these into strings and things. You have to write a little bit of code for that. So that I want to bore the things. But simple concept was that I want to introduce you with the typecasting. By typecasting I mean typecasting, or what we call it data conversion as well, to convert one data type to another data type. That's the goal. Then sometimes we need to take multiple inputs. For example, if we give a statement, this is a car, and we want these things to separate, and we have a method for that, split. If you see what split method does is, it will split our input. For example, if I go in here, so here we have a text. This is a sentence, and I want to split it. By split I mean wherever the space is, I want to get these things separately. So what I'll do is I'll just call this function split on this. You are not again seeing the screen, now you are seeing it. So text here is, this is a sentence that I want to split. Okay, so my thing is that I want to get all of these words separately. मैं इनको एक एक करके चाहता हूँ. I don't want it to be a whole string. I want these to be separated. So यहाँ पे ये space is separated. Now I want them to be separate. So मैं यहाँ पे क्या कर रहा हूँ? I'll call a function split. If you see it, यहाँ पे मैं split use कर रहा हूँ. So for example, if I just print the words now, I'll just comment out this much of code, so you can see. Now you can see that this is a separate input. Now is a separate thing, a is a separate. Now I have access to all of these separately. Okay, so this is how we can use split methods in order to split an input. If somebody gives an input and I want to split it separately, so you can use this split method for that. Okay. So again, you can split it using commas. If you can see the John, comma, DOE, comma, 30, New York. So if I want to split, it's called a delimiter. Here the delimiter is a space. So space is actually distinguishing. We are distinguishing these things by space character. So here we have comma. So we can just mention comma is a delimiter here. So you need to separate it via this comma. So I'll just comment this one out and I'll just use this. So here you can see John is now separated. What if we use a space in here? Because there is no space, so it won't separate it. You can see it. This is just one string till here. And there is a space in New York. That's why it separately wrote York. Am I clear what this string method does? What the split method does? Basically, it splits whatever the input is. Okay? Is that clear? Nice. Then we have list comprehensions. Okay? For example, this is a list comprehension. I think and we can cover this, and we can, I think, we can cover this much. Okay, I will move to list comprehensions. So in order to create lists, sometimes, for example, if we want to create a list of items, so there is a concise and powerful way. There is a really concise way and a powerful way to create those lists. For example, you have to write a single expression in order to write. For in other language, what you have, if you want to create a list of different numbers, sometimes you have to take input one by one, and you cannot write the code. You have to write a thing in different loops and things like that. But here we have list comprehensions, by which by applying this expression, you can actually generate a lot of things by using the single line. I'll just show a simple example of that thing. So for example, if I go to the code window again, so here you can see that I have just defined a list squares. Okay, so I'll just clear this. The first thing is I'm creating an empty list squares. So in that, what I'm doing is I'm then putting the square of numbers. For example, from range 1 to 5, so we'll get numbers. So if I just run this code over here, so initially we had a list, empty list. In empty list, what I'm doing, for each number I'm squaring it, 1, 2, 3, 4 till 5. I'm putting 1 square is equal to 1, 2 square is equal to 2 square is equal to 4, sorry. 2 square is equal to 4, 3 square is equal to 9, 4 square 16, 5 square 25. So I'm squaring all these numbers and putting in a list. So as you can see that in the code, what we are doing in the first case is we are running a for loop for it. We are running a for loop of each number and then squaring it. If you see, the output will be 1, 4, 9, 16, but it is a little bit difficult. You have to use for loop. So what I am telling is we can do the similar thing by the comprehension. You can see this list of comprehension. What we have done is x. This is called exponential operator. X square for x in range 1,6. We have created a list out of this. I think my screen is yes. So by just using this command, you can do the similar thing that was previously done by these many things. So you can just create it like this. So for example, if I run this code now, you can see it again gave the same input. So I can change the range here to just differentiate it. So this is a powerful tool. You can see that without even writing these lines of code and appending the things, I was trying to append these numbers. I just wrote this x square for x in range of 1 to 7. I told you the guy was a mathematician. Now it's clear why a guy was a mathematician. So if I see how in the mathematics, how do we write? We write, for example, for all x comma y belongs to real numbers, a set of numbers such that x, something like this. So if you see in the code, it is similar to that. Squares, x square for all x in a range of this. You can see the mathematical notations being used here. If you have read about sets, there is a roster form, there is a set builder form and things like that. So you can see in that we write it like this. So list comprehension is actually a powerful tool to create lists and manipulate these things, because these things can be used to take multiple inputs as well. So I have also mentioned how to now take multiple inputs. So here user will prompt enter multiple values separated by spaces. Then values will use a split method to create those values, and then we can use those values. And again, same thing can be done by comprehension of the values as well. So here we'll say int values for value in values. So we are just using the list comprehension to take multiple values. This is also uses your list comprehension though. So you can do the similar thing. For example, input enter multiple values separated by spaces. I'd like to run this problem to show you in a much better format. So enter multiple values. I'm saying 12, 13, 14, 15. So I have entered 4 values at one go. So what will happen is, now this line will run. This values, it will split this 12, 13, 14, 15. It will split it, and then it will assign it to int values one by one, like separately it will be assigned, and then we'll get this in a printed form like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So just enter it. Invalid little int with a base 10. We have to separate it by spaces, because here we have split by spaces. I put a comma, that was my mistake. So I'll say 12 space 13 space 14 space 15. So you can now see it. Now you can take the integers. That's why you have to take care, like while programming. And having an error in a program is a good thing. If you are having an error, you know where to get wrong. So usually there is a famous meme: if my code runs in a single go, there is some problem with it, because there will be a mistake and I am getting the result. So this coming up the errors and then fixing the errors, it will be a usual process in coding. So you'll get some errors, you have to fix it, because you cannot keep the eye on everything. So here I am just using the split method with spaces. I was putting a comma in between, it did not identify it. Okay, the same thing can be done by list comprehensions. So here I can enter multiple values using separated by spaces, and then I can do the same thing. For example, I'll write 5 space 6 space 8. Okay, so here you can see 5, 6, 8, they were separated and put into a list of these int values. Now just going to the print function again, how this print function works. I'll just go briefly over it, because we will be using these print functions, these list comprehensions again and again, because in the next session we'll go into the meat of programming. Okay, how these loops work, how if else statements work, and then we'll go to real projects as well. So that's why we're just building up, because the things that we'll be using more frequently, we have to get a better hang of them. Okay, so now we'll go to print function, because usually you use print function to print something on the screen, and you might have you are also have seen me that whenever I type something, I'm using print function to see if the value is really there. We'll discuss what the built-in means, but like it is nice.